Okay, good evening, everybody, and welcome to, well, it's not a Tuesday night, but the last Monday night of 2024. Start by just saying thank you to everyone that has tuned in over the last 52 weeks or more. Always appreciated, always enjoy the back and forth that we have in these discussions, and, well, to date, it's been a 4-year journey, and, we're just one leg through that journey and about to enter into the next one. But what a perfect time, really, to have just a look back on 2024. And I make no apologies. There's going to be very little done on the lower time frames in terms of what's happening right now. I'm not really bothered on this call where Bitcoin or Tau or anything's going to be in the next hour, 4 hours, whatever. I will do a little bit at the end, but I'm trying not to look at the price. I just want to focus really on what we've done, and I don't really know if it's going to take 10 minutes or 25 minutes, 30 minutes to try and get through it all, but it has been a hell of a lot of things that have taken place during 2024, which I think, given where price currently is at the moment, where market sentiment currently is at the moment, perhaps we've kind of overlooked. And I just put something, a bit of a throwaway comment in the chat there, but the question of how we're ending this year, are you in a better position than where you started it? And only you will really know that. And it's all right if you're not. I mean, from a price point of view, altcoins pumped towards the end of last year, and we saw that sort of go into the ETFs. So maybe you are suffering a little bit from that. It's not a problem. We've got next year, if the 4-year cycle is going to continue, is the really year we're going to make some gains. But perhaps this is an opportunity to just look back and go, well, where did I actually go wrong? How do I make sure I don't make that mistake next year when things are really flying up? There is a poll going on as well. Appreciate any feedback you've got in that. What was the biggest or the key moment for 2024? I can only put 4 options, and one of those is, something else. But BTC ETF launch, breaking of the 100K psychological level, Trump winning the election, or something else. So if you do have something else, then feel free to drop that one in the chat. I'll try and scan through those as we go. I'll close the poll part way through. Now, I've just put together this thumbnail, and it's just a selection, about half of the thumbnails I created for the year. But for those of you that were waiting for the call to start, you may have had some time to have a look at it, and you kind of realize that this year has been a bit of a yo-yo, despite where price started and where it's ended. That middle 8-month period of the year, the sentiment moved up and down a lot. Sort of that the concern and jubilation within the market sort of yo-yoed quite a bit, and I think it's kind of reflected in at least some of the titles. Granted, a lot of them may be clickbait titles, sort of things that we ended up talking about. But again, because we kind of got caught up in the ups and downs and the worries from a psychological point of view, I'm wondering how much we remember of actual events that took place. So we'll dive in through those. We'll have a look at where it's going, try and cover a little bit of price today. I'm only going to talk about BTC and probably Tau, because I think they're the two most interested. And then very briefly, let's have a quick look at what 2025 may bring us and what we need to do for that. Let's just close that. I'm all over the place today. Day before New Year's, you know what it's like. Okay, so here is the year. This is BTC's year. So far left, which I think you can see, I don't think my face is in the way of it. We've got the 1st of Jan. As we can see, we opened, these are round figures, but we opened roughly 42,000, okay? And by the end of the year, we haven't quite closed yet, but let's say we're going to close somewhere between 94, 95,000. So at least a 2.5x, well, actually not at least, about 2.25x from its opening position, which is not that bad. Thinking about where we started and what we came through and some of the legs that we came across. Now, as I mentioned, this year for me was 8 months of just ranging. 8 months of sitting around not really knowing what we're doing, sentiment kind of, jubilation whenever we went up, the world's going to end whenever we went down, but ultimately we didn't really change too much except for the fear and greed index. And it was kind of bookmarked by 2 large moves up. We had one in the early part of the year, predominantly in February and into March. And then we've had the Trump pump from November to mid-December. We're seeing that fall away slightly at the moment. And so, you take those 2 out. We've spent the vast majority of this year kind of twiddling our thumbs. Yeah, it's okay, we've tried changing in between. And I've certainly changed my portfolio a few times in between there, because Bitcoin moved, or didn't move, should I say, there were other opportunities that presented themselves. But when you look at this chart here, it's on the logarithmic, and it's, daily time frames. There's a lot of candles here, and I've kind of compressed it to fit it onto the screen, but it doesn't feel like it was that big a move. And as I mentioned, it's actually just over a 2x from where we are now to where we started at the beginning of the year. But you can kind of see on the table, hopefully it's clear enough. What we've got is a year to date, this far right column. And all of these are basically the monthly closes going back to the opening of January. So you can kind of just see how it moved. And as I say, that sort of middle period, we kind of yo-yoed, and then suddenly November, we just flew in, and December I've not done because we don't know where it is yet. But even some of these highs, early part of the year, met in March, new all-time high. Then we couldn't break that all-time high until pretty much October. November, we tantalizingly got close to the 100K, but smack bang 4th of December, we broke through that 100K, and then we saw the all-time high mid-December, currently sitting at 108,000 BTC, and it feels wrong because we're now sat at 94, and we're worried. Fear and greed index across the two sites, 50 on CoinMarketCap. It is about 60, 65 on Alternative Me. So there's certainly some resetting of that, which is always a good thing, and perhaps, giving us a good foundation for where we can see 2025 to go. But we'll touch on those in a moment. So let's have a look at it. I'm not going to go month by month. There are somewhere just breaking down the months, but either some months I miss, and then other months I've just sort of bunched together. But I do want to start in the most logical place, and that's at the beginning of the year. And I'll take you back, if I may, just to the very end of 2023, and we had the hype surrounding the ETF launch, the Bitcoin ETF launch. And we were awaiting the news. And to be fair to the SEC, they didn't make us wait too long. Hopefully you can see here, we actually went live. So we went live on the 11th of January. It was officially announced on the 10th of January that they were going to go live on the 11th. But for me, the biggest story out of all of this, because it was an Avenger call night as well, and it happened literally 2 or 3 minutes before I went live, we had the fake approval notice of the ETFs. And I don't know if you remember this one, but it sent pandemonium through, because we saw from the official, and this was the official SEC Twitter account, that it was approved. And as you can see on the date there, it's the 9th of January. And they gave confirmation. But not 15 minutes later did old Gary the Egg, Gary Gensler, get on his own personal Twitter account and actually say that their account had been compromised, and this wasn't actually the news. Now, funnily enough, price actually didn't move that far. It went from 46.6 to 48. So only what's that? Just over $1,000. And then on the rejection of the news, it went down to about 45. So we only saw a $2,000 swing, which, given where we currently sit at the moment, is bugger all, to be perfectly honest. But it was interesting that news came out, and then obviously the next day we got the approvals, and the hype was real. ETFs went live, and we saw this thing spike up to 50K before, what surprised absolutely everybody, Bitcoin price started to drop. And it wasn't necessarily that there was an uptake for ETFs, but rather I think Grayscale was selling at such a rate that we were just pushing the price down, and we saw it actually drop into the low 40s and high 30s before the close of the month, which, for us, we were a bit surprised. We thought ETFs were going to be the way forward, but looking back in hindsight, as we always do, actually, these boys are just getting in at a much better price, and the likes of BlackRock were buying this like it was no tomorrow. And we can kind of see some of the analytics here, and I'm not going to necessarily go through them all because there's a lot of detail on this here. But for me, these two charts or graphs here kind of say it all. I'm hoping you can see it. I'm just going to wait till it settles down. Yep, you can. So on the far left, we got the 10th of January, 11th of January first side, just solely Grayscale. And then Grayscale started to sell off, and we can see the purple Grayscale, just constantly sold throughout this time. And we can see the sort of the black area really dominating. That's BlackRock's, as you can imagine. They've just been absolutely gobbling up not just what Grayscale is selling, because we see Grayscale, topped the entire ETF market at the beginning at just over 600,000 Bitcoin. Now we're well into 1 million. So the ETFs have been buying other Bitcoin that has been available to them, but it is BlackRock's show, in my opinion. Fidelity have also got a decent amount. I was trying to work it out or eyeball it. I think Fidelity actually might have more than Grayscale. But, even the smaller ones have still got a fair size, ranging anywhere from sort of like 30 to 70, 80,000 Bitcoin. So yeah, actually, table next to me, Grayscale and Fidelity are almost on top of each other. So for me, it really has been a push throughout the entire year with the ETFs. And yes, I accept that there was a period in and around the halving where we saw outflows from the ETFs across all of the ETF providers. But again, that was quickly eaten up, and we look back sort of like those prices in and around the halving, which we'll talk about later, and maybe it was just sort of driving that price down to buy some more because they haven't really lost the appetite. And I'm not saying that the ETFs were the biggest event within 2024. I'll save my opinion for a little bit later on that, but they have certainly been a catalyst for pretty much 12 months. So they've helped drive that price, helped drive the demand of Bitcoin throughout the year, regardless of anything else that's gone on, good or bad. There's always been that demand, and that is shown there because from the get-go, we never really dropped under 600. I'm not zoomed in, maybe there was a day, but generally we've outbought whatever the original amount that Grayscale held when they converted their G Bitcoin. Anyway, so yeah, quite impressive. This was just the fake Bitcoin story. And the reason I've left this one up is I didn't realize this. But actually, bearing in mind that it was obviously someone internal, well, that's not obvious, but we believe it was someone internal to the SEC, because at the time they were saying their 2FA was compromised as well. It wasn't until October of this year that the FBI actually managed to arrest someone. That one totally slipped me by. They pleaded not guilty, so we'll find out whether or not he's guilty in due course, I'm sure. But one certainly to keep an eye on going forward. We move into February, and no real news stories happened in February. I think for me, the news story itself was Bitcoin's price, because at the back end of January, we started to see Bitcoin climb out of here. And, we opened February in and around 42,000, and we closed February at 64,000. Not quite an all-time high, but certainly retesting those levels that we saw in April, if not quite getting to where we were in November of 2021. And again, you could argue February's price action was just a microcosm of what we've seen throughout the entire year. We've got, a period in this middle of ranging activity bookended by two large moves up. And we sort of, okay, you could argue we had a bit of ranging at the beginning. I won't discredit that. But from the 7th, nice strong move up from sort of like 42 to 52. These figures sound quite small compared to where we are now, but at the time, large. Then a week and a half, 2 weeks worth of just milling around. And then we saw that, range from 50 all the way up to 64 and a strong move up there. And it wasn't just Bitcoin that was moving. We'll actually also see with the red line here, this is total too, so Ethereum and altcoins. And we saw that it was moving, but Bitcoin was definitely moving at a faster rate. Okay, I've tried to scale these as best as I can. And you can kind of see, yes, there's a gradual increase while we had sharp increase there and sharp increase there. And so altcoins were following, rising tide and all that lifting all ships, but Bitcoin was the chosen vessel to move the market for that period. And I think personally that to me is down just to the ETFs starting to build up. We were starting to build into momentum about the halving and dropping from 6.25 to 3.125 or whatever the figure is. And suddenly we were going from 900 Bitcoin a day to 450. The world was panicking that we were going to have such a supply squeeze that we were going to hit 100K before the summer. Sadly, not quite the case there, but we were certainly moving in the right direction. And when we get into March, a couple of news events here, we did finally breach that all-time high. So we breached 69,000, which we did on the 4th of March. Was it the 4th? It wasn't, sorry, it was... Just trying to get it here. Yeah, the 5th. So again, Tuesday the 5th, another Avenger call. Breached the new all-time high, and then we continued to climb all the way up, setting the all-time high on the 14th of March, Thursday the 14th. Well, I've got it at 73,740, and that is the price that we kept until deep into, I can't even remember if it was October or November. We'll find out a little bit later on, but that was it. When we were all talking about going much higher, yeah, we wanted that pullback. We thought it would just be a respite, and 100K was around the cards, particularly with the halving happening in April. People were thinking, oh, we'll pull back to halving and then we'll fly up after that. Turns out that wasn't the case. This was the high that we had to sit with for 8 months. And that was a long 8 months for us in terms of just dealing with how we were managing our time, how we were managing our portfolios, and really managing our emotions with that fear and greed. The other big news event for me that came out was good old Sam Bankman-Fried. He finally got sentenced. So we had the court case, which went all the way through the back end of last year. We were waiting on the sentencing. There were talks of him getting up to 140 years. But in the end, he actually got 25 years, which probably is not 25 years it's not long enough in my personal opinion. But 25 years is what Judge Kaplan gave him for, I can't remember how many it was. God, I used to know this case off by heart. It's funny how things just drop out of your mind. But there was like 12 counts, and then they had to knock it down to 7 because they didn't have enough evidence for it all. And they wanted to get this trial over and done with. And so, yeah, 25 years for whatever the 7 counts that he had there. And obviously, he's still serving those. Now, we talked about last week whether he may get a pardon, and we'll have to wait and see on that one. But it certainly was a fairly decent news event for the year. Didn't do anything particularly for the price. I think, the court case and everything else was fine. And him going to prison doesn't really change the fact that, FTX still hadn't paid out anything else. And, his assets, etc., had been confiscated long before. I don't think there was anything else really from within this. No, I don't want to waste too much time going through. And the court case was not done then, so let's not talk too much about that. And then we get into April. And you know what? We'll start with the back one, because back end of March, we had SBF go to prison. And then we put, arguably had the biggest character after Satoshi in crypto space, Changpeng Zhao, or CZ. He was sent to prison for 4 months, which, the memes around that were absolutely brilliant, just because the amount of times he posted GM and 4, because BNB was always 4th in the chart. He gets 4 months, whatever. But yet he was sent to prison. Bitcoin's price actually did drop. Whether or not it was related to that doesn't necessarily matter. And we'll find out later on that, he served actually about 5 months. He had to do a halfway house as well before getting out. But the biggest thing from April, in my point of view, was the halving. And for those of you that don't know how it works or can't remember how it works, we call it a 4-year cycle. It's actually every 210,000 blocks that are mined. And with a block mined roughly every 10 minutes, it takes 4 years to do 210,000 blocks. So when the 840,000 block was mined, that was technically the end of the 4-year cycle, even though it wasn't quite 4 years. It was a halving, and that took place on the 20th of April 2024 at 9 minutes past midnight. I can't remember where I was, but I was actually out on the pop, out on the piss when that happened. But I do remember checking my phone just because I was a sado. I was like, oh yeah, we've had the halving. It's one of those non-events to actually watch. The significance is really just the implications of what it is going forward. And as I said, there was so much talk because previous cycles, the halving has always been the key point in which we're going to start to see, maybe not immediately, but generally within sort of 60 to 100 days, we're going to start to see that price go on. And the previous 3 halvings, that's exactly what we had seen. So there was optimism that, come the end of May, come the end of June, we're going to continue. We're going to get back above that 73,000, and we're going to just proceed up to that 100K. As I say, as we all know, that wasn't necessarily the case of how it happened. But in any bull cycle that we've seen so far, the halving has always played a key result. The other interesting thing from that, which people were scratching their heads about and maybe getting a little bit too excited, is we never saw a new all-time high prior to the halving in each cycle. It was always after the halving, with the supply squeeze from the reduced amount led to the new all-time high. We now know that wasn't the case this time. We saw the halving happen in March. The all-time high happened in March. Halving happened in April, and we never took that all-time high for about 6 months from where we currently sit at the moment. So, yeah, kind of threw that one out of the water, didn't it? So yeah, anything on this one? This is a standard thing for those of you that not on crypto Twitter. This is what he used to always post, and then he gets 4 months for it. I mean, it's absolutely. But he also was fined a couple $100 million personally, I think, and everything else. So, chump change for him. And you know what? To be fair, he's kind of dropped off the map a little bit. I certainly haven't seen too much posting from him or talks about him. I don't actively go and seek out what he's up to. But anyway, moving into May. Now, May was a bit of an interesting month because the biggest key event that took place was Donald Trump, actually, because you got to remember at this time here, everyone still thinks that Biden's got his marbles. Everyone still thinks that Biden's going to come in for another few years. And so we talked about this quite a lot. Donald Trump comes out and actually starts to say that he's pro-crypto. And he had signed up to go to the Bitcoin convention and everything else. He's going to be a keynote speaker. Suddenly, crypto was put on the political map. And I sort of said that, this is just, it's all well and good Trump saying he's pro-crypto, but it may well be that, he's polling badly at the moment. Whether or not the polls are correct doesn't necessarily matter. People have seen that actually there's a demographic of the American population that are young, right-leaning, and into crypto, and he needs to focus on those. So even if he talks about cryptocurrency in a positive light, he may secure some votes. And so we start to see cryptocurrency being used, as I mentioned, a political football, and that will continue now as election momentum starts to pick up and pick up and pick up. And despite, I don't even think I actually talk about Biden dropping out of the race, but when we swap over to Harris, they didn't really decide to pick that up as well as Trump had done. And I'm not saying that cryptocurrency is what won it for him, but I'm sure it did help quite a few voters, because the last poll that was done, I think it's something like 17% of all Americans have, experienced purchasing crypto. They may not own it all now. I think that's only down to about 11%, probably because some of them have been wrecked. But a lot of people know about cryptocurrency now. It is becoming more mainstream, and we can take that back to, one of the biggest events of the year being the legitimizing of Bitcoin with the launch of the ETFs. And so that is now becoming more into the mainstream. Then you got the likes of Donald Trump talking about it, and we'll see how that progresses later on through the year. The other thing from May was meme coins. Meme coin mania hit a bit of a fever pitch. March, we did actually see a little bit of an alt season, but in May, we really saw meme coins take off. And a brilliant picture for that, this red line now overlaid during May, is Solana. Just how well Solana did versus most other cryptocurrencies. I should have put total market cap. Let's just see if I can quickly do that. Got to try and get the scale correct as well, though. I can't move the red one. You can kind of see just how well Solana did. Solana's the red. Total, which will include Solana, is the purple, I suppose, pinky purple. Indigo color, and then we've got Bitcoin's price over this. But the reason I overlaid Solana is because Solana suddenly, well, not even suddenly, but it became the network for meme coins. And at this stage, we're talking sort of 5,000, 10,000 meme coins being created every day. And there was plenty of opportunities to actually make some decent, quick money out of meme coins. And I'm not saying it legitimized it, but suddenly we saw meme coins absolutely flying with, dog with hat. We've got even like the likes of, I suppose, Pepe and Bonk and Book a Meme, and a few of those other ones flying through. Popcat, SPX, all of these ones start to have huge resurgence, which we go on to talk about later on in the year. But it was actually in May that we saw, I don't want to say the legitimacy of meme coins, because let's face it, even with all of the successful ones that you and I have ever talked about, there's still 99.99999%. They're absolutely dog crap. Hock tour style. So, but yeah, there was definitely a meme coin mania. We see another one later on in the year, but the reality is for a lot of us, we really want to see meme coins and those degens rushing in, retail rushing in 2025, trying to make a quick dollar, thinking they can do it in meme coins. And that's sort of the the foundation of that theory really sort of bore fruit, if you will. Going a bit poetic here. Sound like Stuart. Sorry, I read Stuart's comment earlier. Fellow intrepid Kryptonians. I was like, wow. Yeah, this kind of sort of solidified in a lot of people's minds. We've had a big rally from there. We can see that actually there is some interesting memes. More importantly, it's not necessarily an Ethereum-based narrative anymore. Actually, Solana can do it faster, quicker, cheaper, maybe not as reliable, but yeah. And we can talk about meme coins till the cows come home in terms of sort of like the change of the tokenomics and how they've been done now to sort of like provide sort of, I don't know, degens and followers and, you know, like sort of cult environment that Murad talked about in his talk in September, which again doesn't feature today. Yeah, we even saw, you know, some of the meme coins knocking Cardano out of the top 10. And you got to remember at this stage, Cardano and XRP were both laughing stocks because despite everything else moving, these guys were remaining stable. But Pepe, Shiba, Dog with Hat, like they was all reaching new all-time highs. And a lot of those like SHIB and Doge being able to sort of fly up through the teens and into the top 10. And for a time, knocking the big boy Cardano down. Yeah, Bitcoin, Donald Trump back in Bitcoin. So for those of you that I always get confused myself, you got to remember he is not just on Twitter at this stage. He was on the Truth social platform. So if you're going, Harry, I can't find that tweet on Twitter, because it wasn't. It was on his Truth platform at the time. I think he was banned. Anyway, now we move into the summer period. This is where things get a little bit interesting because for me, Bitcoin's price was pretty dull. You know, yeah, okay, we saw 70,000, but we also saw 50,000. But the mean was about 63,000 over a 3 or 4 month period. And you can't quite see it on this one. We get the fear and greed up here. This is over a year. But if we have a look, sort of like June, end of May, we're at like 75, extreme fear. You know, we pump up beginning of June 78, so extreme. Then we drop back down, you know, mid-July, 25. Then back up in July again to 74. Then all the way back down in August at 5. And I forgot, you know, it's funny now. That was when we had the carry trade incident. The whole market crashed. But again, you know, the reason I've got the fear and greed over here is because the price was just ranging, granted 20 grand worth of ranging, the market was on a knife edge and every green candle was met with euphoria and every red candle was met with depression. And, you know, it's not a healthy way to kind of be within a market. And it's not a healthy way for someone that views the market every day to just be looking at it. But it's where we were just worn down with that price action. And then, you know, we sort of see back end of the year, we kind of climb out of that. But certainly we end August. I mean, what's that? 29. At 29. So we started this in 78, ended it at 29, with 2 yo-yos back up to the 70s. So yeah, a bit of a wild time from the fear and greed sort of thing. But with that, we actually saw, you know, massive opportunities for these rallies, and big political news events had massive impacts on the crypto market. So, you know, there were a lot of Trump-based coins in and around the summer, Trump, MAGA, all of those ones. And we saw that actually following the assassination attempt, you know, some of these doubling in prices. I know this one here only says 52, but actually when I looked on Deck Screener, some of them doubling, trebling, quadrupling in price, pulling back sharply, of course. But that Trump assassination attempt, first, I should add, you know, one, I think massively probably helped his political career. But this picture for me embodied everything about what every true crypto believer is all about. You know, sort of like fist in the air, covered in blood, fighting the institutions, the financial institutions, and just going for it. And I'm not even American, but that to me is such a powerful symbol of your now next president, covered in blood, underneath the American flag, fist in the air, and in the video shouting, fight, fight, fight. I think most of the crypto universe, you know, we felt that. for however long our journey in crypto's been, I think that was a real symbolic kind of push for us. And we can kind of see with the price, you know, we were down at the assassination attempt at 57,000, and then we get up to almost 70,000. I'm not saying it's off the back of that solely, but you know, that kind of positive spin on things. And obviously Trump started to take a bit of a lead in the polls. I can't remember. I think he was still against Biden at this stage. I actually can't remember when that happened. I think it was sometime in July. It might be in early August. And so, yeah, you know, that was there. Then the other interesting thing was the Ethereum ETF, because given how well Bitcoin had done with the ETFs, and to this time, regardless of the price ranging, BlackRock et al. Were hoovering it up. Everyone's very happy. I mean, you can't not be even now happy with how well the ETFs have performed. And so there was a lot of hope around Ethereum's ETF. And, you know, the first 4 hours, okay, the people went flying out the gates. But immediately after that, it just dried up. And it's still that case at the moment. You know, there's just never really been the demand for the Ethereum ETF that we've seen elsewhere. I mean, the totals are pretty low. We've got, what, 2.6 billion. That's it, spent. I mean, it's more than that because obviously Grayscale sold, but the net is 2.6 billion. Which, yeah, okay. We have got BlackRock at least trying to, but still, they're not buying much. There are days where they don't buy, or they buy, 9 million's worth. That's not the case with the Bitcoin ETFs. Okay, there are days in which they sell, but generally, they're always buying, and they're buying in massive volume. And for me, the lack of interest in the Ethereum ETF was quite telling, because we're not talking about sophisticated crypto investors here that understand about the networks and gas fees. And geez, I forgot another event which happened this year, of course, which was the Ethereum 2.0, moving away from proof of work to proof of stake. But anyway, you know, I'm not expecting these traditional institutional or traditional investors to really understand about. They're just looking at it of, I want to get into cryptocurrency, but for me, it felt like altcoins aren't it for them. And it'd be interesting to see how other altcoin ETFs go. But I don't think Ethereum is particularly a positive picture for where things are going. Since I don't hold any Ethereum and I've got quite a decent amount of Bitcoin, I'm all right with that. That's absolutely fine with me. But yeah, sort of the price, we were getting towards the back end here, and there was a lot of talk going into, it was a down August, and then there was Rectember, and the fear around Rectember, started to kind of build with where we were going. But actually, Rectember never really materialized. Yeah, okay, we had a couple of downward days at the beginning. And we opened at 59 and we got down as low as 52. But from that 52 point, we went all the way up to 66, and it was just pretty much constant climbing. And then funnily enough, we saw the market have a turn at the end of September, right on when CZ was actually released from prison. So yeah. Now, the other big event that happened in the month of September, in my opinion, was we got our first interest rate cut in years. And that helped the market, and that certainly helped talk about where we could see this going in sort of medium to short term, and further talks of interest rates. Just helping to bring the price of borrowing down, which would then lead to just effectively money being put back into the stock markets. There's data to suggest that obviously, one, that has happened, but two, whether that's sustainable, we'll have to wait and see going into 2025. And let's face it, that is a risk that we all carry on our backs for 2025. Are the traditional markets going to continue going it? And if they don't, will cryptocurrency stand alone against it? I'd argue at this stage, probably not. But we moved from September into what we thought was going to be October. Kind of was Range-tober, really. It did end green ever so slightly, but it wasn't too much. But in this period here, for me, I haven't put anything in it because all our time seemed to just be dominated by the election, the US election, and what was sort of going on there. And, you know, I kind of get involved in all those stuff. I like to see a semi-democratic process taking place. And so, yeah, it went the way that we wanted from a crypto point of view, maybe not from a political party point of view. We'll leave those ones on the doorstep. And what we saw beginning of November the 5th, the elections took place. By early hours of November the 6th, we knew that Trump had won. And then we saw what happened, the Trump pump. And from Bitcoin alone, it saw a 60% pump from the price of when he won the election to the all-time high, 60% increase, 40,000 without really a pullback. Okay, and bear that in mind. You know, 60% pump, $40,000 over the course of 4 weeks, 5 weeks, and barely a pullback. We have seen $14,000 pullback now, but that was where it was going. And of course, just because he was elected didn't mean that Biden stopped being president. And we know that actually Trump's not going to get into power for another 3 weeks. 20th of January, I think he swears in, which is that 3 weeks tomorrow? I think it probably is. And again, that'll be an important date, both for crypto and also for the traditional markets. Now, in the last 4 years he was president, the markets did very well and they seemed to work very favorably. Obviously, we'll be looking for much of the same, but there's plenty to do through that. The other thing that happened, I can't remember the exact date, but the other thing that happened is XRP stopped being a laughingstock. So sometime around the election, the XRP or Ripple Labs and the SEC resolved their differences, and it kind of quietly did it in and around the election. And suddenly XRP's price started to move. Now, it's on the logarithmic chart, so it doesn't look that much, but it was at 57 cents at the election. And we've seen it peak at $3, 6xing during that time. And there were not many, legacy altcoins that did that. And it suddenly went from being a laughingstock to the XRP army buying themselves, well, they didn't sell, but the ability to retire themselves and buy whatever they wanted. And okay, the price has fallen down since then, but what hasn't? And it's still sitting above $2. So it's doing pretty well. And I think this was, for me, just to symbolize exactly what happened with the rest of the altcoin markets, particularly the traditional, the legacy altcoins. We saw massive growth in the likes. So BNB, Cardano, XRP, Polkadot, Link, few of the other ones, Stellar, all of that, massive rises. As I suppose, these OGs that did hold on were able to, or people suddenly came flooding back and realized they had a little bit of dust in the wallet somewhere and thought they'd buy some more. Whatever the case may be, we saw altcoins rally quite hard. Bitcoin, as always, rallied first, and then altcoins kind of followed. I know this is just XRP's line here, but it was very symbolic of the rest of the market, just not as steep. So sort of around the back end of November. And as I mentioned, let's get rid of the red line. As I mentioned, for BTC, end of November, tantalizingly closed at $99,900, not quite tipping the 100K, but we all knew it was only a matter of time. And thankfully, we only had to wait 4 days in December. And on the day that we broke 100K, we then dropped all the way down to 91,000 in classic crypto style euphoria met with absolute despair. And it just goes to show, these key psychological price levels, they are volatile. If you're brave enough to trade them, there's definitely money to be made. But if you're not, don't shit the bed, because they generally recover themselves. And, it took a week or two, but we saw us break 100K again. We got on the 17th of December to $108,000. And as I said, since then, we've seen that pullback, and we'll have a look at price in a moment. What are in these ones? Yep, he won the election, fine. Don't know what this one is. Don't know. CZ saying hello. Okay. Right. And And that, sorry, I'll just catch up on those news articles there. Almost sound like I was a bit surprised. And that kind of summarizes the year. Of course, I missed a few news events, which I've remembered partway through. There's been plenty of other news events, but let's just have a look at the poll. I'll just end it. So I only put 3. I didn't see anyone put anything in the chat. So we'll just go off those 3 there. And it seems that 61% of the people who voted in the poll suggested that Trump winning the election was the biggest event of 2024. Then the ETF launches and then breaking 100K. Where do I sit with that? I'll tell you, I'm going to be a politician. I'm going to sit on the fence. I personally, at the moment, don't think Trump winning the election is a big enough event in crypto space yet. He has made a lot of promises, and if those promises even get half delivered in 2025, we're going to have one hell of a year. But for me, just what the ETFs mean for just the future of Bitcoin and legitimizing that, I think that's where I would put the biggest event of the year. You know, we've seen how popular they are. What I would love to see, actually, I don't want to see it, but we will see it, is how it does in the bear market. Our investors just going to sell because they can sell pretty darn quick. And how quickly they're going to sell. So that's something we need to bear in mind with that one there. But that's kind of where I sit. I think breaking 100K was nice. And as I say, I remember getting back in getting into crypto in 2017, and we were getting close to 20K. People talked about that 100K level, and you know, we all thought we'd get there. It just seemed like such a high level. Now we've hit that 100K level. I don't think it's too embarrassing to talk about $1 million Bitcoin. I'm not saying we're getting there next year. Maybe it takes another 8 years. Who knows? But the fact that we, you know, have gone from all these levels and still continue to hit them just says quite a lot of where this thing can go. No, I don't think that's where we'll be in 2025. I would love to be wrong, but no, I'm not sure that's where we're going to get to. Let's just talk about 2025 and then we'll have a look at price action so with 2024, and I don't know about you, but that one absolutely flew by. You know, I keep on thinking that last year was the bear market, but actually the bear market was end of the bear market was 2022. So we've done all through 2023, now through 2024. And if the 4-year cycle's about to be correct, we're going into 2025, the parabolic phase, the move up, which is going to see significant growth. And again, these kind of charts never do it justice because we're on logarithmic. I'm going to break my chart now by sticking this on linear. But these moves up, you know, these seem huge. They're tiny. That's felt huge at the time. It's tiny. This move here, I don't know where it's going to go. The top there does not necessarily mean it'll get to 240. Might get nowhere near that. Might go flying through it. But this next phase is really going to move. And the biggest thing, the reason we call it the parabolic phase is it's not parabolic necessarily for Bitcoin. Bitcoin may only 2-3x from there. Lovely if it did. It's altcoins. Altcoins are what we're going to see. And so next year, for me, we've got Donald Trump coming in. And if he does something, you know, we talk about the strategic Bitcoin reserve, potentially the gold rush that could be with just other sovereign nations, you know, admitting that they've already started doing that and going for it. We've got Doge, not the cryptocurrency, but the Department of Government Efficiency. Be interesting to see just how they sort of tackled that and how that kind of runs through. But then the biggest thing is what does the main markets look like? You know, where are we? Inflation's kind of under control. You know, we've been in that sort of like high 2% for a while, 3% depending on which country you're in. We're kind of getting close to that level. Yeah, there's going to be ups and downs. But where are we going to be? So when Trump gets into office, you usually have that 100-day window. So sort of sometime around the end of April, beginning of May, we're going to be, you know, sort of evaluating how he's performed. And maybe that's when we start to see some of these larger schemes, whatever that he decides to introduce, come into play. He's going to need to provide money to do that. Is that when we're going to start to see the money printer turn on? And we talked about this 2 cuddles ago. You know, yes, interest rates dropping are a key event, but when you really start to see the market turn around, interest rates have to drop, which they are, but the money machine needs to be turned on. So we need to see that money machine turn on. That's hopefully what we're looking for through 2025. I know things aren't looking great in the traditional markets necessarily at the moment, and so there's always that rock on her back, rod on our back as to whether that's just going to absolutely scupper us. And we'll have to wait and see how that one goes. But that's kind of leads me into the next point of, regardless of how you think 2025 is going to play out, two things are going to happen. If this is a traditional 4-year cycle, we're going to see epic gains, but also epic drawdowns. Yes, we want to be in the market for the epic gains, but we want to be out of the market for the majority of the drawdowns. That's the whole goal, isn't it? That's what we get in this market for. That's why we try and buy into it. And I've harped on about this for 3 years. Next year, you've got to have your plan in place. And I don't care what it is. We'll talk about that more in 2025. But you've got to have some understanding of what it is that you're going to do, because we are going to get to that greedy kind of side. We are going to be like, yes, the grass is greener. I'm going to just hold on a little bit more, and then it's gone from under us. And maybe we have to wait another 4 years for that to happen. We don't want to be that this time. We don't want to be sat like that. We want to be the ones that maybe took a little bit early, left a little bit in just in case, and we ended leaving happy with where we got to. But we're going to see the ups and downs next year. And that's not to be shied away from, but it's also not to be caught up in. Whether it's going to be like what we saw in 2017 with just a single move up, or it's going to be some sort of double top, we'll have to unfortunately wait and see. But we need to just arm ourselves, Don't have a number in your head, or don't just have a time in your head of where you're going to get out, because they're the things that are going to trip you up, because unless you're incredibly lucky, you're not going to hit either of those. So just bear that in mind with how it's going to go. I do think 2025 is going to be a good year. I'm still very much a 4-year cycle until it's broken. It may well break this time, with ETFs and everything else, it may well break. But whether or not that just breaks with Bitcoin and altcoins suffer their 4-year cycle, we'll have to ultimately wait and see. My kind of prediction of where things may go, because I'm sure people are, I think, Bitcoin may get 150, 200K. I think it would be a good level for Bitcoin. I'll go on to price action in a moment, but you kind of know that I do feel that we may see a further pullback than what we currently got at the moment. So that kind of move up. Altcoins is where I think we're going to see some real growth. Ethereum needs to pull its finger out. That's the reality. Otherwise, that one is going to get left behind. I don't see 5 figures for Tau. I kind of see mid 4 figures maybe, which is still, probably a 10x from where we currently sit at the moment. So not too bad. Meme coins will certainly be an interesting play. I do think they've got another pump or two in them when retail really flood in. AI sector is there. I'm wondering whether there's an opportunity to dip toes into the real world assets, things like Ondo. I haven't done. It's annoying because I think Ondo was told to me by someone in RT at like 20 cents, and at one stage I think it got to like $2.50. But we are where we are with that one. I don't think the market's going to end in January. I do see us playing out through the year. Even if we only get to sort of Easter time, maybe early summer, I think a lot of things will be done, not just from a crypto point of view, but from a traditional market point of view. Like first 100 days of Trump, what does he do? What does Elon and the rest of the dream team actually get together? And can they actually turn this around? We'll just have to wait and see. I'm definitely leaving talks of drones and fog and all that random stuff that seems to be flooding my timeline at the moment on one side of the table. We'll wait for all of that mysteries to unfold. Interestingly, though, this report came out just after the election, and it does seem like the majority of the investors seem to think that the second half of 2025 is when we're going to see the peak, particularly that sort of like end of Q3, beginning of Q4, which I know we kind of talk about quite a lot, plus or minus 30 days, the 1st of December is where we've seen it in the past. And a lot of that makes sense, but I just have that niggling doubt in the back of my mind that if that's what retail are saying, it's probably wrong. But we got time to talk about that through the early part of next year. Let's have a look at where things are currently standing. So I know this is the chart we normally see at the beginning of the call, but we've got Bitcoin here, and it's obviously broken down through that major level a couple of weeks ago. And then we've just been creating lower highs and lower lows, really. We're sort of like starting to dip down. It's a 3-day time frame at the moment. We've only got a few hours left. Actually, this is a daily time frame. Sorry, apologies there. Don't know why. It's normally on the 3-day. So we've got about 4 hours left, but we haven't really cleared the level that we opened at yesterday. Yes, we've dropped down. We bought out quite quickly. When we go on the lower time frames, we'll potentially have a look as to why. Tau's an interesting one down here on the 3-day, because we have seen it drop, but look at the level it's hit again. This level, this support level is like, eons long, a year and a half long. We came down, we hit it again today, we bounced off it. The thing we've got to see, we've really got to clear and close on the 3-day 500. It's no good as getting up there to like 496 or whatever. We'd be losing steam there. We've got to have some decent bounce. But strong level that it's bounced off. We'll go on to the daily time frame in a moment. You'll see other levels of confluence from that. But we have a look at Bitcoin here. And again, daily time frame, ignore the EMAs at the moment, but price levels down here. We've bounced down here before. So there is definite price action. There was a rejection point over here. Then we have a look at where actual price currently sits at the moment. It's on the 50 EMA. So, we've had that rest through. This is the first time we've really broken through it. Yesterday, we broke through a little bit since October. And you know what? October, it didn't really mess around too much. Yes, okay, it was caught by the 200 EMA there, but that kind of caught up with the 50 just because of the 8 months worth of ranging. There's a hell of a gap between this and that. You can't ignore it. And we'll have a look at some levels, which we've done in the past anyway, of why it could get down there. But if I think it was a 12 hour that looks a bit better. If I now just do that fib from down here to up there, a lot of this makes sense now, doesn't it? Because let's get rid of that. There's a lot on the screen. What are we resting on at the moment? We're resting on the 236 down here. Now, on the 12 hour, we're below the 50, we're below the 10, we're below the 20. Top part of that has been there. So on the 12 hour, that 86,000 level actually it kind of makes sense. And we've talked about that on the daily as well as being a key level, because it's the bottom of this sort of shoulder / shelf, but certainly the rest point after this move up, because this move from the election was fairly strong. And then we started to see some candles, for a couple of days actually closed in and around there, all on the 86. Plus, that 200 EMA is catching up with that. Then we look at some of the other levels here, just based on the fibs, 80,000 and then 75,000 at the 618. Again, kind of previous all-time high, 74,000. So we're getting back to kind of that level right down at the bottom. And we've also got vector candle recoveries. And then if I throw on this, which again, a bit messy, but this is obviously all of the liquidity zones from the market makers. Sorry. And this fib, remember, is taken from a different one. So it's the fib extensions here, but the levels kind of tie in. So 94, which is where we're at the moment. So that, kind of ties in with what we were bouncing on the 236. Then we've got 87,000, which ties in with this area of liquidity down here. 82,000 with that 80k, and then that's 74,000. We were talking about 75 a second ago. And again, there's another level. So there's a lot of reason to get down there. Do I want it to get down as low as 75,000? Absolutely not. And hopefully it doesn't. Can I really be bearish if it gets down to 75,000? No, I can't, as long as it sticks the landing there. We start losing 75,000, to be honest with you, we are going to be talking about some problems there. So I don't want to go too far, but I can see some logic in where some of those are. Again, this is a daily time frame, or 12 hour, this one is. What chart was on? Here we go. So yeah, there's certainly some of the levels, and we know, if you've watched this enough, how well I think these fibs do play out. So we don't hold this, we close below it, then I think 86,000 is on the cards. At the moment we haven't, but we are getting squeezed between the EMAs above us, tighter candles, But that could well actually just lead to a springboard up. So something to play for. Not to mention the fact that we're in that low holiday period, lower volume. So, you know, give it a week today when people get back to work proper, we could seriously see some movement. We'll just have a look at Tau. What have I done here? Don't know. Let's get rid of that. Sorry, I don't know what I was looking at on there. So with Tau, again, they're not looking great, if we're honest. I know some of you have sold some of your Tau, and most of you are probably aware that I'm fully out of Tau. And you know, the EMAs alone tell a picture of 10, 20, 50 spreading out nicely above us. But we're actually now also, we closed below yesterday. We are still below the 200 EMA at the moment. 3 hours to go on that. We're riding and right up against it. So that could be interesting in the next, let's say, 36 hours, just to see how that one ultimately plays out. But, we lose it. And I mentioned before, the 400, it's a multi-level, multi-month level. December, November, October, didn't quite get it in the summer months, but you get back into sort of like June, May, April, 400. It's a level that gets hit quite a lot. And then, you look down to some of these liquidity zones down here, vector candles, and you know what? They kind of tie in with sort of peaks, and you could see it spiking down to maybe take at least 50% of this vector candle, but also corresponding with where we peaked out during the summer. So there's definitely that to bear in mind. And then, we were holding our hats on, there's a trend line. I can't remember where it was. I think it was here. Nope. Get my actual trend line. Was it that? That was it, wasn't it? That kind of trend line, bouncing down, we rode it quite nicely. And we lost it. And I got out, it was at 496, wasn't it? So it must have been this one. I sold here, missed buying fully back in. I got 50% back in at 400. The rest of my buyout was all the way down here. Came back in, but I sold everything after it rejected here, and it was like 496, I think I sold. And away we go. And so I'm just waiting to see how that one rides out. But we've lost that trend line. That one's a bit too low. Don't want to worry too much about that one. I was trying to see if there was a way of connecting these here. It's only 2 points. That's pretty hard to call that on a trend line, to be fair. And that's without me throwing on fib, which again, when you put the fibs on, and it's stuff. I'm going to take where do I take the fib from? I'll take it from this one, because that one's had a move and a move down. You could argue that as well, but I want to try and keep that low in. That wasn't the bestly drawn. So we're right, the 382, we battled it, we've lost it, we're below it at the moment. And so that 400 level around about the 0.5 is there, and then the 350, the 618, they all kind of tie in with where I think it could go. Now, I am obviously going to react pretty darn quick if it goes the other way, because the one thing we have to accept on the daily is we might just be forming the right side of that W formation. And absolutely, and we start getting close to 496, I'm just going to get in, and then we'll just evaluate how things have gone in and around there. But I'm watching at the moment, just on the sidelines, waiting to go with that. I think probably that's kind of it. I don't want to go into any of the other ones, because this one really was supposed to be more of a focus on what has come. Sorry, what has been. All it does just says, hey, thank you to everybody for being part of the community, being engaging, coming into these calls, watching them back on repeat, whatever it is through 2024. I think it's been a great year, not just from price action, but, just education and trying to understand and bettering ourselves, lining up for where we want to be in 2025. And so, that's been a positive thing to see. I think we're well positioned. For those of you that are new and joining, and you're just like, well, am I too late? You're absolutely not too late. The parabolic side of things has got to come. You got to make some decisions, absolutely. But a lot of us in here that have been through a couple of cycles, we positioned ourselves in end of 2022, beginning of 2023, maybe incorrectly, maybe like me, went a bit too much into altcoins to start off with. We can afford ourselves a little bit of wiggle room, although I really want to try and just get in and get done. And the only thing we're really left to say, don't give in. I don't really have a chart for it, but 1st of January 2024, the US was $34.2 trillion in debt. As of right now, it's 36.2. So in the space of a year, they've put on $2 trillion. Okay, so just remember, for Bitcoin, not for your scammy altcoins, this is what we're fighting. This is what we're going against. And 2025 is only going to get worse for the US national debt. Every 100 days is an extra trillion now. So that's wild to think that by the time Trump has done his first day in office, his first 100 days in office, we're going to be at $37.4 trillion. Elon et al. Have a lot of work ahead of themselves. All it really leaves me to say after that is, hey, hope everyone has a great new year. Hope we all have a great 2025. I know I've been a bit quiet in Discord last few days, but just been trying to take a bit of time away from it all. But we all guns blazing come Thursday. Really looking forward to seeing where we get to go in 2025. And I make no apologies that I will be harking on a lot about plans, about getting out with some money, because yes, I want to get out with some money, but I'd bloody love it if most people if everybody in RT got out with some money, but at least a decent proportion. So no excuses. We're going to be talking a lot about exit strategies next year. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Enjoy the rest of your week. Enjoy your celebrations tomorrow night. And I'm not sure if there's going to be a trading pub on Thursday. I've got a feeling there probably will be. It's been a couple of weeks. But other than that, I'll see you all next week. Enjoy yourselves and speak soon. Cheers now.